We're live. It says so right there.
Good morning. Good
Good
rainy
morning.
morning to you.
You got to come in the frame.
I believe I shall. There's a bit of a whoosh coming in from the Pacific, and we're coming in on YouTube, as you can see. And I hope you can join us for a few minutes. This is going to be a pretty short one, but we wanted to talk about climate change. And I feel like I can't talk about climate change without talking about frustrating is the least angry word I could say. The frustrating system of power that we live in, that we laughingly call democracy, in which right now the people who actually violated the most basic tenet of democracy and refused to leave office at the end of their presidential term are actually being allowed to vie for another presidential term instead of being in prison where they belong after stomping on and literally smearing poop on the Capitol and violating every remaining good thing about the United States. Well, here they are again. And J.D. Vance had his public argument with candidate Walz, and Kitty Cat wants to get in the frame. And it was pretty much what you would expect, mostly boring, with a lot of sophistry and snark coming from J.D. Vance, and Walz trying to be the good-natured coach kind of guy that he is. In other words, so what? The pretense, the only interesting thing that I took away from it was the pretense on the part of J.D. Vance that he had any or would have any power as vice president. I think what he was really saying is he did not intend to be the vice president. He intends to reign, and had things to say about how he would conduct that, because of course under the Constitution the vice president does not have powers. If powers are delegated to the vice president, then they do that in the name of the president, and otherwise they sit on the side and they are there in case the president dies, and that's it. That's what the Constitution provides. But the climate change has roared inland, and with Hurricane Helene, and struck down the mountains in North Carolina. Quite a thing to see, and the destruction is the equivalent of the great hurricanes earlier this century, is the equivalent of Hurricane Katrina easily in terms of the destruction, damage, and cost. With the air now holding 10 to 15% more water, floods can happen anywhere, and it doesn't have to be a hurricane. It can be just some storm that suddenly forms or rushes onshore from the oceans. Right now we have rain, fortunately, rushing onshore from the ocean, and it's very mild and moderate, and I'm glad to see it. But we now live in an era in which 10 inches of rain or more can drop in a day and devastate anywhere. So what I wanted to say is that private flood insurance and the government boosted private flood insurance that we have now is clearly not enough. Part of the problem is that it defines the landscape as floodable or not floodable in terms of the maps that were set out in the 20s or 30s or 40s, which simply no longer apply. Everywhere is floodable. If we got 10 inches here, the basement would be in trouble. The basement would be inundated, and the road's impassable, and it can happen. We just have to recognize that this is entirely possible now. So we need a different system. We need a national climate change insurance program. So I suppose it could be the NCCIP, the National Climate Change Insurance Program, and people are starting to talk about it. There's a discussion about it. I was just saying that the flood maps define areas as not floodable that are clearly floodable, and that is part of the problem, that builders can get insurance and put buildings and houses in places where they shouldn't be. So obviously the maps need to be rejiggered. I want to quote something from a source that I normally would not give much heed, but I think they know what they're talking about when they're talking about the cost of home insurance. And that is the New Republic has an article titled "Helene has triggered a national rethink of home insurance." Quoting, "The cost of home insurance in the U.S. has increased by roughly 20% over the last 2 years." Bonk. Just leave that laying there. "And is on track to reach new highs in 2024. The consequences of that extend well beyond individual policyholders. Affordable housing developers, already discriminated against by insurance providers, have been forced to delay and cancel projects amid skyrocketing premiums. In some cases, they can't even get a quote. Between 2022 and 2023, nearly 30% of the 400 affordable housing companies surveyed by the National Leased Housing Association, a trade association for those developers, saw premiums increase by at least 25%, another heavy figure, leading many to raise rents and cut costs. So this is, speaking for myself, this is an immediate effect of climate change, is that the rent's going up, literally. And a lot. It's not going up just a little. More than half the renters, of course, greed is the reason the rents are going up, but this is pushing rents up. More than half of renters nationwide now hand at least 30% of their income over to landlords each month. If only we could have given 30% through much of our lives when we were poor, meaning that home insurance increases are now exacerbating the crisis in affordable housing for renters too. These pressures are especially intense in some of the areas worst hit by Hurricane Helene. That includes famously red-hot housing markets in South Florida, but also the more temperate mountainous regions of North Carolina and Tennessee that were hammered with as much as 2 feet of rainfall over the weekend. Look up Chimney Rock on the web and you will see devastation is the word. Whole rows of houses wiped out, sludge where the city was. Wages in the city's biggest industries only grew by 15% at a time where median rent in Asheville increased by 33%. That's just an example, and it's a few years ago, and I'm sure things are worse now. And to wind up that quote, median home values nearly doubled over the same time period, jumping from 199,000 to 319,000. Many of those living in Helene's 800-mile path of destruction. That's part of why it is, so expensive, is it's so huge and so long. Whether renters or homeowners may not be able to afford to move back. So, and what they're implying there, of course, is that there are now Hurricane Helene refugees. And as I like to repeat, no one cares why you're a refugee. It's a sad situation.
Absolutely. And so what we're seeing here is internal displacement, right? That we have national refugees who will be on the move from this devastating storm, as we have seen in the past. We saw that after Hurricane Katrina, and we also saw a very a telling and frankly racist land grab after Katrina happened. And so when we see communities that are already marginalized, are already vulnerable in the path of devastating climate change driven storms, what are we doing to mitigate the harm to those communities? There's the initial loss of life that, aside from actually mitigating climate change itself, we can't do anything about that. The storms, they come in, they wreak their destruction. They destroy a whole lot of things.
They wreak and wreck.
And then again, we are left with the survivors. How do we support them? How do we make the communities whole? How do we help these people? As a nation, how do we help our neighbors? Now let's look at the global issue, right? And while this is happening here, it's happening elsewhere in the globe. And this is part of what is driving the global migration and what is in part driving the immigration crises, so-called immigration crises, that is being politicized. And so again, it's really important that we keep a clear view of what's happening with that, and that we in fact prioritize work to mitigate climate change, because it is obviously affecting us. It is only going to get worse. We are at the very beginning. It's only been happening the last decade. If we look globally, we can see the devastating effects of increased monsoons, increased floods and droughts around the world, devastating landslides around the world. Well, we are noticing it more and more and more here in the US on this landmass. And so it is super important. It really needs and this is my point for the morning, it needs to be our national priority. It needs to be this country's number one issue that we face as a nation. Let us mitigate, let us stop, let us change all systems to go green, because we don't have a lot of time to fuck around anymore, right? And so we have fucked around. We are finding out it's not good. So we need to stop that. And as we are concurrent with that, we need to direct a whole lot of resources to making communities whole again, to helping people who have been impacted, whether they be folks actually living in this nation or folks that are fleeing floods, landslides, and droughts, famines from wherever they are fleeing them, because the US has had a much larger than our fair share of contributing to this crisis. And so I believe we are morally obligated to not only prioritize stopping this crisis or mitigating the harm from this crisis, we are also obligated to support those that have been devastated.
You know, we really do have an insidious and powerful and focusable enemy in this fight. It is the oil companies and the associated industries, and to a large extent, the government that they own. And I was just thinking back to Hurricane Katrina, and how I was commenting at the time while Little Boots Bush was doing his heck of a job brownie routine. The resources for rebuilding and saving the lives of people in Katrina were actually at the Green Zone occupation area in Baghdad. I remember at the time I said they're building an occupation zone. This is not an embassy, and it got furious pushback from leftists. Hello, what do you think of that now, you guys? But that's where the Seabees, the construction brigades, who could famously build an airport in a couple of days during World War II, that's where they all were. They provided no help, absolutely zero.
But the Mexican army did.
The Mexican army did. Bless the Mexican army, playing music as they marched along, literally up the border. Bless them, and bless everyone who thinks that way. But I want to say that this industry, Koch brothers, Exxon Mobil, the whole oil gang, really do push very hard to get this idea out of your head that the crisis is severe and ongoing, and B, that the current system could do anything about it. I've said that rather clumsily, so let me rephrase. I'm sorry. First, they don't want you to think about it. That's the main thing. Secondly, when you do, they want you to think that they are actually moving to make things better. And one of the big things that they do, aside from little tricks like the recycling scam, is to promise to capture carbon. And there is, if you will turn in your hymnals to Desmog blog, you'll find an article that says fossil fuel companies made bold promises to capture carbon. Here's what actually happened, and you can imagine what the article says. I'm not going to quote it much, but I do want to just rattle off. There's something, they come up with a map. They have come up with a map in the front of it at the, above the fold. And it tells the story of 10 or a dozen projects. And then the article goes on to point out that only one of the projects actually put more carbon into the ground than it took out. All of the others worsened pollution. And the one that did succeed, the name of it is the Terrell Natural Gas Processing Plant at Val Verde, actually put some carbon into the ground, but it is too little, too late, in the order of literally billions, not millions, billions. It is absolutely an empty gesture and an attempt to divert your attention. And I point to that one because that's the one that worked. It means nothing, absolutely nothing. Massive life-changing, government-changing, history and society-changing changes have to go through.
We have to treat it like the emergency it is. It has to become our number one national priority. And what we have, unfortunately, are one major league candidate. Christ knows how he's become a major league candidate again, but okay, who absolutely flat out denies it's happening, throws paper towels, towards hurricane victims, and It holds meetings with oil industry movers and shakers, offering them, pieces of his loyalty at only, what was it, a couple 100,000, a couple 2 million, staggering numbers, right? For a political contribution.
The man is astonishingly corrupt. That is pretty much his middle name.
So, yeah, fuck the populations. Okay, I'm going to say right now,
Fuck the population.
I-
That's not what you mean to say.
fuck, yeah, in his mind, fuck the
Oh, okay, right.
populations that are going to be devastated, in the path of climate destruction, in the path of these increased superstorms and droughts, flooding, fires, and landslides, right? Fuck them. They're just the little people. They aren't his concern. The executives, the owning class, the oil industry, the captains of industry, those are his peeps, and he will absolutely sell all of us out to serve them.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolute, doesn't even blink, not even.
I want to wrap up by
That, but I'm just,
okay, go ahead.
If I could, and we have the other party who, yes, wants to invest in green infrastructure, has promoted things like the Green New Deal, has given a lot of lip service to climate change, and also is facing this I'm going to say crisis of the uneducated, crisis of voters who actually have not paid attention to these stories, who have been, I'm going to say, brainwashed by the cult of 45. And I just, I fear that the capitulations for political expediency are not really helping us, right? We need to address this head on and without apology. We're trying to save ourselves and this planet. So, everything we can to support the efforts of the New Green Deal, the Green New Deal, and to keep on pushing for climate mitigation, climate change mitigation is the moral choice.
Absolutely. And an outbreak of democracy is just the last thing our rulers want. And yet, education is the key to an outbreak of democracy. We have to do education piece by piece. When I say we, I mean you and I together. I know that all of y'all are active, and we have to say some basic and obvious things. For example, we've noticed that the tornado belt has been moving further and further north as various insects and animals, like I've noticed skunks in the area. Well, another thing that will move north is Pacific hurricanes, absolutely inevitably. I mean, show me the thermodynamic system in which those hurricanes would not move north under the warming of the waters. They will be here. It'll take a little bit longer. We'll have some different sorts of Pacific storms first. And it is just as obvious that our beautiful West Hills that we look west to see every evening, hopefully when the sun isn't too low and it's not blinding you as you try to get your way down the road. But you know what I mean? We look at those West Hills all the time. That's one of the things I love about Portland. It will burn to a cinder. On a stretch of 7 to 10 hot days, it will burn to a cinder unless an extreme effort is made to mitigate that harm. And that's just, of course, one of billions of such tracts. So this is our crisis, and our enemy is the oil company. It is that clear. And I kind of catch myself getting older. I don't like to say our enemy is, but that's the fact. You could take any individual person out and re-educate them, I'm sure.
It's the industry.
But it's the industry. And as they like to say, they have a legal obligation to their shareholders. They have a legal fiduciary obligation. There's a nice dollar word. Fiduciary means with money, obligation to their shareholders. Well, so what? They have to stop. They have,
I think, a higher obligation to the planet.
Hell yeah.
And if we need to change laws that actually, bring that to mind, then we need to change laws to bring that to mind, because in fact, first duty is to not kill us all.
If I told you that I like you because you're smart and fiery,
You know, I'm not feeling all that smart and fiery this morning. I just got to say, I want to let folks know I'm dropping more F bombs than ever before because I woke up this morning with sort of an asthma flare and sniffles, and now I've had my asthma meds, and they make me feisty.
I'm gonna bring Ozzy because he's like tried so hard to get on camera. So I
He
just want
has
him to
tried
be able
so hard to get on
succeed.
camera this
Hi
morning. He
guys.
has.
Hi, I'm Ozzy. I'm very furry and derfy.
Okay. And now there goes the Aussie.
Oh,
All right. So with that, I think we are
I'm done.
okay. Transitioning now to our tarot of the morning. I apologize for my sniffles and nose blowing.
If I had
No
a
one needs to
rocket
see that.
launcher, some son of a
Anyway, so here we go. Here's our cards for the morning. We have Temperance.
temperance.
We have the Knight of Cups, and we have the King of Pentacles. What does this all mean? Well,
Do tell.
what I'm seeing here is the King of Pentacles talks about the responsibility of being a leader. It is about putting in the hard work, the hard efforts to gain that which we need or want to gain. It means getting down to the nuts and bolts, a little bit more than armchair quarterbacking, a little bit more than being organizers in the social media sense. It means doing the hard work that needs to be done to succeed, to get what we need to get. And in this context, I'm gonna say this means, politically, we have to do the hard work to get where we want to go.
Oh, that makes sense. What was Kitty sniffing on there?
Kitty is sniffing on a bottle of tuna time.
Tuna time. Oh,
Yeah, it's treats, right?
Okay.
It's treats. Oh, and well wishes to all other co-snifflers this morning. So we also have here the Knight of Cups, and the Knight of Cups guides us, right? We shouldn't just, we shouldn't just spin our wheels doing a lot of hard work in any direction at all. We have to be guided by wisdom and tapped into our hearts.
This kitty's gotten into the treats too.
Well, they're looking for wisdom is actually what they're doing.
Oh,
They're
couple wisdom.
taking a deep look. There is a little owl face on the planter. There we go. And the little owl above, symbolizing the wisdom that we can access through our hearts, through our emotional selves. So let our feelings, let our hearts guide our wisdom, our and guide our efforts as to where we are going to put in our hard work, our hard efforts to achieve what needs to be achieved.
Treats.
And then finally, and treats at this point, I think mean continuing our democracy.
Treats.
The finest. And then we have Temperance. And Temperance is a card that says a lot of people interpret this card as a call to moderation. And there is some of that involved. But I also feel strongly that this card speaks about how we can achieve strength, how we can strengthen ourselves by facing opposition, by blending what seems to be opposites, right? In the way that a sword, in the way that steel is tempered or glass is tempered, right? Think about that meaning of the word to temper. It's not necessarily all about moderation, though that is a part. It is also about finding strength through the blending of what would seem to be opposites. And so, as we feel ourselves buffeted around, as we feel ourselves fighting extremes, as we feel ourselves facing disparities, what can we do to, in fact, uh, forge a path that finds a blending?
Discrepancies.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the part of my brain apparently tied behind a veil of snot.
Apparent discrepancies. I get it.
You know?
It's a good one. I'm going to use it.
Good. Okay, so
I'm some
I
serious.
think you get what I mean here, because I'm gonna stop before I really just put my foot in. I'm gonna just start making up words wholesale. Okay, so in essence, then, what does it mean? It means that we are in some kind of, hairier times, and it is important to keep going, to persevere, but to find some middle ground, to not I don't want to say middle ground, I want to say to pull in influences, to temper and to blend energies so that we can continue forward in a stronger way, that we are guided by our hearts and inner wisdom, and we must, in fact, continue hard at work. There's a lot of nuts and bolts work to be done. Okay, that's what I have this
I
morning.
really like that. There's such a continuity in those images. Like
They're-
get the treats, get the wisdom. No kill the pet goldfish.
no kill the goldfish. It's kind of fun to faint at that, but you got to hold back. Sometimes it is the higher path. Okay.
Hi, John. Hi, Tat.
So hello to everyone this morning. Hello to everyone that's joined us and who will be joining us in the future times as you see this after it gets posted. Thank you all so very much, Sarah and Jabara and John and Tat and all. And we'll be back next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Really, thanks so much. I'm really gratified to see y'all's comments. And our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea.
And may we all stop our sniffles soon.
Yeah. Yeah, keep breathing.
Woohoo!